So today we're going to look at our second lesson of exponents, and we're going to be looking at the order of operations, BEDMAS. Okay, so we're going to be using BEDMAS. And so my first question for you today is 2 plus 3 all squared the same thing as 2 squared plus 3 squared? The answer is no. So 2 plus 3 all squared does not equal 2 squared plus 3 squared. And that's because we must follow the rules of BEDMAS. So looking at 2 plus 3 squared, assuming that we're following the rules right away, we go into our bracket, and the only thing that we have to simplify is the 2 plus 3, and therefore we can write this as 5. Our exponent stays. And then I go back to BEDMAS, and the only thing that I have left to do here is the 5 squared, so I get 25. Now, alternatively, let's just say we forgot about the bracket for a moment. So we have 2 plus 3 all squared. What does the square really mean? Well, it's telling us that everything inside the bracket is being multiplied by itself twice. And then again, we can simplify inside the brackets. So we have 5 multiplied by 5, which again is 25. So we did make a little bit of a mistake by not simplifying, but we still got the same answer. Now, following BEDMAS, as you can see, it's a lot less work. So we always want to follow BEDMAS because it's very rare that you wouldn't make those mistakes. Alright, so BEDMAS. Brackets are always going to be first. Well, let's use a color that's a little nicer. Brackets always first. Then we have our exponents or powers. And then with multiplication and division, don't forget that we do them first depending on how we read left to right. So we always read left to right. So if you get to a multiplication and then after you find a division operator, you would do the multiplication first. And if you got to the division first and then the multiplication was after, you would do the division first. And it's the same thing for adding and subtraction. So I'm just going to do this one in blue and we can talk about that one. So adding and subtracting, again, we read left to right. So if you get to the subtraction first as you read, then you would do that first. And if you got to the addition first, then you would do that first. So addition and subtraction, oops, should be an S there, those are interchangeable as well. Okay, now we always follow BEDMAS though, so it's brackets first, and then if we have an exponent, we do an exponent, and then if we have multiplication and division, we do that, and then we do addition and subtraction last. And I've just written the acronym there for you, with everything written out beside it. Let's do some examples. So I've only got about 3 examples here, not a very long lesson at all. I'm going to write BEDMAS down just above here. Alright, so looking at example 1, I don't have anything that I can do inside of my bracket, so I'm going to move on. The next letter that I have is E for exponents, and I do have an exponent. So remember that that 5 is affecting everything that it's touching. It's touching the bracket, and therefore what we actually have is 2 to the power of 5 here. So 2 to the power of 5 is equal to 32. So what this really is telling me is I have 3 multiplied by 32. And we can just finish this off because there's only one thing left to do. 32 multiplied by 3. We get 6 and 9, so 96. And this would be my answer. Pretty easy. Alright, let's do one that's a little bit more difficult. So example 2, again, we look at BEDMAS right away. I'm going to write this down right above it. Alright, so looking at example 2, the first thing I notice is we do have brackets. So I've got to go inside my brackets. There's only one operation that happens, and therefore I can do this and it becomes 24 multiplied by 8 squared multiplied by 20 divided by 4. Okay, so I'm just doing it as we go. The next question that the next step that I do is I look back at BEDMAS. So even though I've done one step, I look right back at BEDMAS. I don't have any more brackets that I can simplify. I do have an exponent. Okay, so we've got 8 squared here. So I have 24 multiplied by 64 multiplied by 20 divided by 4. Now, if you get to this step, again, we're going to go right back and we look at BEDMAS again, and we're reading left to right. All that I have here is operators of multiplication and division, and therefore I'm going to stop here and do that. We're not using calculators, so if you aren't that fast with mental math, just write it down. It's not a big deal. 4 times 4 is 16. 4 times 2 is 8, plus 1 is 9. I drop my 0. 6 times 4 is 24, and 2. 6 times 2 is 12, plus 2 is 14. So I get 6, and a 3, and a 5, and a 1. These are some big numbers. Alright, so from here I go right back up to BEDMAS, and I look at it, and I've got multiplication and division. We like to read left to right, so therefore I choose this one here. Again, I'm not very good at doing that in my head super quickly, so I'm just going to write it down. That way I don't make any mistakes. Dropping my 0, and I go to the 2, so I get 12, and 7, and 10, and 3. So we have 30,720 divided by 4. And again, if you want to use long division here, you can. I'll do that on the side just so that we remember how to do that. You could also really do it quickly, divide by 2 and then divide by 2 again. But either way is fine. So the closest that 4 gets to 30 is 28. And that is from 7. I have 2 remaining here, and I drop a 7. And the closest 4 gets to 27 is 24, and that's 6 times. I have 3 left over, and I drop a 2 down. And the closest 4 gets to 32 is 8. And I drop my 0, and I just drop my 0 up top. So this will be 7,680, and that is my final answer. So we're just making sure that we're following BEDMAS every single step. Alright, last example. I don't have enough room up top, so I'll just write it down over here. I highly recommend writing BEDMAS just so that you don't forget. So I'm looking at my equation here, and first thing I see is I do have brackets, and I do have something I can simplify in that bracket. So I have negative 3 squared. Now the important thing here is that the square is actually only touching that 3 there. It's only affecting the 3. It's not affecting the negative symbol, and this was something that we talked about last class. So nothing happens with my square. I've got 8 divided by 2, and now what I have is plus, and in brackets I have minus 9. Now, if you want to simplify this, we don't like to write plus minus, and therefore I can just erase this and rewrite it as minus 9. Alright, now back to BEDMAS. I start my new line. I have no more brackets. I do have an exponent, so I have 4 squared. I'm going to simplify that. That makes it 16 minus 8 divided by 2 minus 9. So that was the step that I just did right there. And back to BEDMAS again. So what do I have that I can do? Well, I have a division symbol. Okay, so I have to do the division before I do subtraction. Subtraction comes way after. So we've got 16, and we've got minus 8 divided by 4. So minus 8 divided by 2, which is 4. And now I can simplify this finally. There's 2 more steps here if you want to do it the long way. So back to BEDMAS. I've only got subtraction, so 16 minus 4 is 12. And 12 minus 9 is 3. And that is my final answer.